Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Michaela Riley. We are honoured to acknowledge members of the Reconciliation Australia who are joining us this evening. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following school: from New South Wales, Manly Village Public School. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is birth by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. At every stage, advance Australia fair. In joyful strains they let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal William Alexander Young. William Young was born on the 21st of May, 1890, to James and Alice Young. He grew up in Port Adelaide, where he attended the local school. Young lost his parents before he turned 10 and was brought up by his aunt, Mrs. Inglis, in nearby Exeter. He went on to work as a clerk. William Young enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in February 1915. He was posted to the newly raised 27th Battalion and left Australia for active service overseas at the end of May. The 27th Battalion spent 2 months training in Egypt before arriving on Gallipoli on the 12th of September. It seems that Young was left in Egypt, where he was promoted to temporary corporal and eventually made storeman in charge of kit bags. A small act of disobedience later saw him revert to the rank of private, but he was later promoted to corporal again. Young rejoined the 27th Battalion in January 1916, following the evacuation from Gallipoli. He travelled with them to France in March 1916. Some 4 months later, the 27th Battalion took part in its first major operation on the Western Front near the French village of Pozières. On the 4th of August 1916, the 27th Battalion attacked 2 strongly held German trenches known as OG1 and OG2 to the northeast of the village. The battalion was able to capture the trenches together with a heavily fortified windmill held by the Germans, repulsing a number of strong counter-attacks. Today, the location of the windmill is an Australian memorial which, in the words of Charles Bean, marks a ridge more densely sown with Australian sacrifice than any other place on earth. One of the 23,000 men killed, wounded or missing was Corporal William Alexander Young. Young remained on the official missing list for months. Investigations revealed a large number of conflicting accounts of his fate, from him being in England with a broken leg to him being alive and well and in charge of stretcher bearers in November 1916. Some said they saw him killed at Pozières, others that he wasn't killed until 4 months later. Some informants confused Corporal Young with a sergeant of a similar name in the 27th Battalion, making it harder still to determine Corporal Young's fate. About a year after he first went missing, Corporal Young's aunt, Mrs. Inglis, received formal notification that military authorities had determined that William Alexander Young had been killed in action on the 4th of August 1916. His body was never recovered, and today he is commemorated on the memorial to the missing at Villers-Bretonneux. William Young was 26 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal William Alexander Young, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.